Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today I'm going to be telling you everything you have to know about the 2024 presidential election. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this. And so what's very interesting about this cycle is that it's been a pretty chaotic one at that. I mean, we had the Democrat nominee drop out. The Republican nominee, Donald Trump, was almost assassinated on live television. So definitely we've had a lot of shakeups this cycle. But the thing that I'd like to point out is that, at this point in time, Harris being a shakeup, there's a couple things with her. Number one, she was not the democratically elected nominee for the party. I mean, basically the delegates are choosing her to be the nominee because Biden said so. I mean, that at the end of the day, that's basically what it is. And because of that, you kind of have a problem because you may have Democrats not as enthused to vote for her, at least the ones that voted in the primary for Biden, which he in fact got 14.5 million votes in. And that may really be a problem for Harris because you may get some Democrats who potentially write Biden in or don't go vote. And this argument of, more democracy is definitely going to fold against Trump because at the end of the day, Harris, was installed as the party nominee. And there's even talks that Harris basically got the okay from Obama to tell Biden that he would basically be removed by the 25th Amendment, which really in a sane world would have been the right thing to do, but they were kind of going to exploit it for political reasons to remove their democratically elected nominee for the party. And so I think that's going to be a problem for them with independents. I think with the border, I think that's going to really be bad with independents too, because Harris has more responsibility for the border than even Biden himself. I mean, she has been the border czar, and now there's media that says, she actually wasn't the border czar, when they referred to her as the border czar herself. And I think Trump, with the assassination attempt, I think with independents, he's going to gain. I think with the whole, this whole thing with Republican defectors, I think, especially with Harris and the assassination attempt, I think he's going to get a lot of them back. And I think with union support, I think Donald Trump's going to really solidify that base, especially with Kamala Harris, who doesn't really have a lot of, white working class appeal in the Rust Belt. I actually think he's probably going to trend the Rust Belt more to the right than even the Sun Belt now. But enough of that. Let's get into these safe Republican states. I think the state of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska, all of it except the 2nd Congressional District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana, and West Virginia, as well as Iowa, Ohio, and South Carolina are all going to go safe, as well as Maine's 2nd Congressional District. Donald Trump against Harris, I suspect, is probably going to gain a lot of rural support against her because she's not going to have that appeal that he would have had, or she would have had. I don't think she's going to have the appeal that Biden would have had with some of these ancestrally Democrat voters. And I think that Trump is probably going to win the rules by pretty big margins at this point in time. I think she's going to do even worse than Hillary did in 2016 with this voting bloc. I think he's probably going to win rural voters by at least with over 65% of the vote, which would be a really bad defeat for a Democrat with rural voters. And so I think that actually puts the state of Florida into the safe Republican column as well. Now, Texas, with Harris kind of gaining with some sort of white suburban resist liberals and certain African-American demographics, you may arguably say that Texas is no longer in that safe column, but I would argue that Florida is. Democrats on election day in 2020 led the voter registration by 88,000 votes. And now Republicans lead by 950,000 votes in voter registration. And if you were to apply that to the election shuffler in Florida, that gives Trump a 12-point victory in the state. And that's not even countering in, Democrats that could possibly flip over, independents who could probably vote for Trump. So I'm very confident he's going to win the state by about 15 points as of right now. I think for California, I'd say Harris still wins it by over 15, but I'd say a 7 to 18 point victory, and 17 to 18 points, give or take. I think that Harris is going to struggle with Hispanic voters quite a bit, even more so than Biden would have. And I think that's really going to hurt her in, the LA area and the San Francisco area. And I think with black males who are pretty prevalent in these communities, I think she's probably going to do worse. I think the only reason why she wins the state by over 15 is that white resist liberal type is probably going to be moving to the left, and that's definitely going to cause problems for the GOP long term here. But I think that more than likely Harris wins the state by 17 to 18 points, which would still be an underperformance from Biden's 29-point victory. So this is not like a miraculous, she's going to do so much better. No, this is still far worse than what Biden even did. Now, looking at other safe states, I'd say Hawaii's a hard one. I think I may leave that in the likely column, but I'd say Vermont, Massachusetts, Maryland, D.C. would still be in that safe Democrat column. These are left trending states, and I think with that kind of white resist liberal suburbanite type voter, I think that Harris is going to do well with those, and I think that she's probably going to gain quite a bit in Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont in terms of what Biden would have done, but I think she's still going to underperform Biden's margins from the last cycle. Now, for those likely Republican states, I think Texas probably votes for Trump by maybe 13 to 14 points. I'd say that against Biden, it would have been safe. With Harris, I guess she's going to probably do better in some inner city areas, but not to the point where it's going to make a huge difference. I think Trump wins this state fairly easily as of right now. I don't really have any concerns about that state. I think Georgia, Trump probably wins it by 7 to 8 points. I think that in terms of the Atlanta metro area, I think Harris may potentially do a little bit better than what Biden would have done, but I think in the rules, I think Trump's going to overperform there to the point where it really wouldn't have made a difference. And I think in terms of North Carolina, we may see that state possibly be like a 10-point victory for Trump. I think that definitely he's going to gain there quite a bit. The state's been slowly trending to the left, so clearly it would be a left trend by about a point or two, but I think Trump's still going to do good with rural voters in North Carolina and kind of buck those suburban trends that are shifting the state to the left. And I think that with Arizona, I think Trump actually wins there by 7 points. I think he's going to win Maricopa County by a few points, and I think he's going to improve in some of those, metro areas, suburban areas of Arizona to the point where he wins the state by 7 to 8 points. Now, with Nevada, I think he actually wins this by 10, similar to North Carolina. Now, I know that sounds crazy because Biden won the state by 2, but you got to understand that, this state really has those main population centers in Washoe and Clark County, and I think Harris is not going to necessarily do good in these counties, and I think Trump's going to improve in the rules just a little bit more, even more so than what he did in 2020, and most of the population resides in Washoe and Clark County, and I think Trump's going to probably flip both those counties, if you want me to be honest with you. Hispanic voters, I think, are really going to defect from Kamala Harris, and I think that's going to really affect her electorally in a state like Nevada. And Alaska, I'd say possibly is safe, but I'd say maybe right now it's like a 14-point win for Trump. They have ranked choice voting. I think that's going to hurt Trump's chances there, but I think overall he would probably end up winning the state, possibly by 13 to 14 points as right now. Similar victory to Texas, but clearly Alaska is trending to the left by a pretty substantial amount as of right now, and I'd say that's probably why it's not in the safe column. Now, for the likely Democrat states, actually, we got to fill out a few more likely Republican states. I think Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are all going to be in the likely column. I'd say Wisconsin is like a 7 to 8 point win. I'd say Michigan's like 5 to 6, and Pennsylvania's like around 6 to 7 points. I'd say he wins all of these by likely margins. I think he's going to really struggle. Trump's going to kind of struggle in these suburban areas, but I think he's going to do well enough in these rural areas where he has still a lot of room to gain. And in some of the metro areas, I think he's going to probably improve in some of the city propers like he did in 2020. And so I think that's really going to help him out in the Rust Belt by a pretty decent amount. Now, for the likely Democrat states, we have Washington, Oregon. I think that Harris wins them by less than 15, but I think that she probably still wins these by anywhere to 9 to 12 points. I'd say Washington's like the 12-point win. Oregon's like a 9-point win. I think Trump doing better with white voters in the rural areas are going to shift the state, but then the suburban trends are going to kick in, and that's kind of going to set back the gains that the GOP could probably make in these states. I think Colorado is like an 8 to 9 point win. I'd say that Colorado even votes possibly similarly with Oregon. Like Colorado is like a long cause gone, like is a long a lost cause for the GOP for the most part. I don't really think they should really even target the state. I think that Harris is still going to win it by over 5 points as of right now. I think Hawaii, I actually think could be under 15. I think it's probably like a 10-point victory for Harris. I know that Biden really suffered in that state because of the illegal, the whole Maui fires. I think that's definitely caused a problem in that state. I think that's going to really shift it to the right. And it's already been trending right for the most part. I mean, it's trended like 5 to 10 points to the right every single cycle. And I think that's really affected the state as a whole. So I think Harris being the nominee, not really appealing to Asian voters in the polling data, I think that's going to indicate her losses in Hawaii. With Connecticut, Delaware, and Rhode Island, I think she wins those by likely margins. I think Connecticut's possibly like a 10-point win, Rhode Island like 12, and Delaware I actually think would only be like a 6 to 7-point win. I think that Harris is actually going to be pretty close there, and I think New Jersey right now, she probably wins it by 5 to 6. Right now it's almost lean Democrat, but I think 5 to 6 points would be the realistic scenario. I think Maine's first would be in that likely column, as well as New York. New York probably 11 to 12 point victory for Harris. Maine's first like 13 to 14 for Harris. As of right now, in terms of those victories, I think that she's going to underperform in these states, but I think that she's still going to win them quite comfortably. And I don't really see New York being relatively competitive this cycle either. Now, in terms of the GOP states, well, Illinois also goes likely, probably 7 to 8 points, similar to Colorado. I think Illinois is going to start trending to the right of Colorado in the near future and could potentially become a swing state if these rural areas really kick in for Republicans with these white working class, these white working class appealing policies. Now, I think with Nebraska second, New Mexico, I think Trump does win these by like a lean margin. New Mexico, despite my model, I probably have it going to Trump by like a point or two. Yes, she's technically doing better with Hispanics, but Trump is improving with whites by so much compared to what he would have done with Biden that I think it's still going to make the state vote for Trump by like possibly 1 to 2 points right now. That's just kind of my guess with the whole thing. And then with Virginia, this one's interesting because our poll had Harris and Trump tied. And yes, she may do better in Nova, but those rural areas may be a problem for Harris. I'd say maybe it's a tilt race for Harris. I think it's really close there, but as of right now, I think that maybe Harris barely wins it. Now, Minnesota, I think, would be coming down to the wire. I think maybe it goes to Trump. Right now, I think he'd do just well enough in the rules to get across, and I think that he would improve in Hennepin County by just enough to narrowly take the state. And then with Maine at large, I actually think he does a little bit better there than people are thinking. I think he probably does better here against what he would have done against Biden. Now I actually think even with ranked choice voting, I think Trump probably actually still wins the state of Maine at large. And New Hampshire, this is fascinating. I think it being such an anti-incumbent state and the fact it's very elastic, I think that might actually push the state to a lean Republican column. I mean, a poll that didn't really oversample Republican or Democrats by like a ridiculous amount, like some recent pollsters have, also have the state as like a 1-point victory for Trump. I mean, the sample that had Biden up 8 or Harris up 8 points in New Hampshire, they like oversampled Democrats by like 11 points. The poll that had Trump up by 1, they had a pretty realistic electorate for New Hampshire. I think it was like D+2. So I would take a little bit more merit with that poll as of right now. So I'd say Trump probably wins it by maybe 2. He could technically still win Virginia. It's still up for grabs, but I'd say Harris maybe ekes it out because of Nova. She could probably even win it by like a point or 2. That's roughly what I'm looking at right now for the election. And so that's basically it. Donald Trump gets 334 electoral votes to Harris's 204 electoral college votes as of right now. So make sure to go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this. Make sure to go ahead and go to the Discord, join that as well. Make sure to follow the Twitter in the description down below. We just hit about 500 followers, so any support would be greatly appreciated. And I will see you guys in the next video.